Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our session on Hate Crime Advocacy Explained. My name is Lise Harrington. My pronouns are they, he. I'm the training manager at Gallup, but I'm also the project lead on the UK's first independent hate crime advocate course. If you join that course, you'll be learning alongside me as facilitator. So everything I'm sharing today is both an introduction to that course and also an introduction to some of the learning you'll gain by joining this really groundbreaking course alongside us. So let's start us off. What is hate crime in England and Wales? So, hate crime is any criminal offense which is perceived by the victim or any other person to be motivated by hostility or prejudice based on disability or perceived disability, race or perceived race, religion or perceived religion, sexual orientation or perceived sexual orientation, and being transgender or perceived to be transgender. You can see here that perception plays a big role in hate crime. So, a perpetrator can make assumptions about whether a person belongs to a protected group and abuse them based on that assumption, even if the person does not belong to that group. Abuse can still be prosecuted as a hate crime because the person was perceived to be part of that group. Essentially, what that means is that perpetrators of hate crime don't need to be right in order for it to be considered a hate crime. As well, you can see here that it says any criminal offense. So I think there's a stereotype in our heads about how hate and hate crime can look. But even if someone is, for example, stealing your cell phone and then calling you a slur in that moment, that could still be considered a hate crime, with the crime being theft. So this is overall the experience that we are talking about when we talk about hate crime advocacy. But you can see here that this is a big, wide definition that has a load of different experiences under it. Hate crime experiences are incredibly diverse, so do our approaches. Hate crime advocacy is really never about a one size fits all approach. Advocates might navigate the same laws, they might navigate similar people of the same positionality, but their experiences are frequently going to be different. It can enable people to understand their rights under the victims code. It might be educating them on their rights. It could be safety planning and evidence gathering. It could be supporting someone to flee where that abuse is happening or stop ongoing abuse. All hate is serious, but the needs of victim survivors are unlikely to be the same, and the risks and barriers are not distributed equally amongst all people. We never want to homogenize victims and survivors. Instead, as hate crime advocates, we want to lean into the complexity of each person who is targeted by hate, as well as those not included in formal hate crime systems to understand their needs. It also might include holistic support planning, managing risk and safeguarding, support with reporting, criminal justice processes, court processes, challenging decisions that don't feel appropriate or representative of what their experience has been. It could be supporting someone to respond to harmful practices. Overall, this role really invites creativity through a person led approach and welcomes a wide range of pathways to justice, and justice is defined by the victim survivor. So, our hope is that through this course, you gain the skills and confidence to walk alongside victim survivors and help them to find their way towards justice, healing, safety. ICA, Independent Hate Crime Advocate, ICA, best practice skills are anti-oppressive, trauma-informed, and person-led. Yeah, this is just one quote from one survivor from one of the many organizations who've come together to write this course. Hate crime experiences, like I've mentioned, are incredibly diverse and introduce intersecting experiences of violence and abuse. And when hate crime advocacy is done well, it leans into that individual experience and offers a person centered approach, which really means inviting individuality, recognizing that we can't look at one group and say all their experiences are the same. It respects someone's choice and autonomy, supporting people to make their own decisions and feel in control of what happens next for them. It also includes dignity and respect, treating people with respect and valuing their opinion, making space for difference and curiosity of various cultures, identities, positionalities that are going to shape their view of the world and their personal definition of justice, as well as a collaboration working with the victim survivor, not for them, ensuring they're informed about what's happening next for them and that they feel in control of that process. It also introduces a holistic approach. So, considering aspects of life, physical, emotional, social, cultural, community, economic needs of that person. And finally, it's really about empowerment, encouraging that independence, belief in self, providing opportunities for decision making and change making that are not dependent on your advocacy. You want someone to have the tools they need to feel safe, to be okay, to be respected for a long time, regardless of whether or not they're still accessing this support. You can see in this experience, this survivor has said, I was verbally abused and outed to people at my place of education, resulting in my partner being scared of her family, finding out about her sexuality, and led me to feel extremely unsafe and anxious on campus. So you can see this is a university setting. This experience isn't even necessarily just about their experience of hate and what they've been through, but the bygone impact of that, what it means for their partner, what it means for them being outed in their LGBT plus identity, what other risks are introduced. You can see even in just these sort of two sentences that there's complexity here, and that complexity is what our course will help you to understand, to respond to walk alongside someone with that complexity of their experience. And why are we talking about this now? Why are we launching the UK's first independent hate crime advocate course now? Well, you can see here through some recent statistics that 2025 saw the highest number of anti-Muslim hate cases recorded by Tell Mama. This amounted to just over 6,000 cases of anti-Muslim hate reported to this specialist expert organization, who's also contributed to the faith section of the independent hate crime course. For the year ending 2024, majority of hate crimes reported to the police were racially motivated, accounting for 7 in 10 in all such offenses. CST, who specializes in anti-Semitic hate, recorded 1,521 anti-Semitic incidences across the UK in the first half of 2025. And that's the second highest total ever reported to this expert organization in the first 6 months of any year. And we know at Gallup that 90% of anti-LGBT plus hate crimes go unreported, according to the Home Office's own figures. Overall, what we can see is that hate crime is on the rise, but so are our opportunities to challenge it. This course aims to strengthen the national response to hate crime in every strand by equipping professionals with the knowledge, expertise, confidence to respond to this need, and also promote equitable treatment across protected groups, driving meaningful systemic change, as well as positive interpersonal experiences with meaningful advocacy. That's a tall order, but it's why our course is complex and runs over 14 weeks. So who can use hate crime advocacy skills? Overall, hate is not limited to one setting. It can show up in hospitals, workplaces, public transport, universities, shops, events, online, even at home, which means every professional in any client, customer facing industry should be prepared to recognize and respond to hate. So when we think about who this course is for, it's for everyone. It's a nationally available qualification that will equip client and customer facing organizations to prevent harm and respond safely to incidents of hate and hate crime, which means protecting your people, ensuring you have a reputation as someone who cares and wants people to be respected in every environment. It also means reducing risk. It helps position your organization or even yourself as a professional as a subject matter expert on hate and able to support both your organization's development as well as victims and survivors' understanding of their rights, of what they're entitled to as someone who has had this really difficult, detrimental experience. It can be change making for NHS staff, police, probation services, support workers, advocates, tech sector professionals, HR leads, retail staff, FOG professionals. Anyone working under the Victims Code could use these skills. Again, hate is so far reaching, so our responses need to be too. A question I'd encourage, rather than asking, could hate happen here? Is it a possibility? It can, and it does. The question we need to be asking now is, would we know how to respond to hate? And do we know and recognize when it is happening? This is just one example of how hate can look. really encourage you as I read through this case to think about how you might respond to a case like this. If this was your workplace, if you were someone who witnessed this, if this is someone who is your line report or someone that you manage. So Sophie is a 27-year-old female employee with fibromyalgia, and commonly understood invisible disability. She has a valid disabled parking permit so she can park close to the building. Over several months, a colleague repeatedly tells her she quote unquote doesn't look disabled and accuses her of taking parking spaces from quote unquote real disabled people. One day, the colleague blocks Sophie's car so she can't leave the parking space. And later that day, the word faker is keyed into her car. Other colleagues witness this behavior, but no one intervenes. Several colleagues begin to avoid Sophie and limit their communication to work essential interactions. Even if you don't have the responsibility for protecting someone, put yourself in Sophie's shoes. Would you want to be responded to by someone who is guessing what the next right step is, potentially minimizing how serious this is? Or would you want to know that someone has the skills and confidence to support you, is going to look out for you, is going to build up your rights and give you guidance that is tangible, informed by the law, informed by the systems available? And that's what our independent hate crime advocate course can do. Our goal is really simple with this course. We want to ensure specialist and equitable treatment for all victims and survivors of hate, and to equip professionals with the tools, knowledge, and trauma-informed perspective to make that vision a reality. This is a CPD-accredited course and a 14-week qualification, so 7 full live learning days run every 2 weeks. It provides people with confidence, tools, expert knowledge, everything that you would need in order to deliver high-quality hate crime advocacy. And why this course is so specialist is because it's been developed by the UK's largest and most robust by and for knowledge base on hate. This is a groundbreaking national course. It explores best practice approaches. It looks at preventing harm, reducing risk, and responding safely to incidents of hate. That knowledge, by and for knowledge base, doesn't just come from Gallup. You're hearing from me, I work for Gallup, but we have spent months and months working alongside leading by and for organizations, including Tell Mama, CST, the Monitoring Group, Choice and Hackney, Stay Safe East, the East European Resource Center, in order to develop this course and build content speaking to what by and for expert organizations are seeing on the front line right now. It's the first program of its kind in the United Kingdom, and it aims to build a national network of professionals delivering expert advocacy for victims and survivors of hate. This has been something that has been imagined and dreamed about for many years by the organizations involved, and we're so proud to finally be able to deliver it to you. So just to break down what the 7 live learning days look like. On day 1, we start by introducing hate, a much more robust version of how we started this workshop today. But it's really about grounding learners in what hate looks like, how it operates, why advocacy matters, building up a lens of trauma-informed practice, intersectionality, and power. On day 2, we move over to hate crime law and criminal justice systems. This is about building confidence in navigating hate crime law in England and Wales, understanding reporting pathways, hostility, sentence uplifts, what victims' rights are, and CPS and court processes. To be clear, a ICA is not a legal expert who's going to sort of take on the role of lawyer in court. But it is important that they know how that system works. They can ensure that a victim survivor's rights are upheld as they move through those processes, if they choose to move through those processes. On day 3, we start off learning about anti-LGBT plus hate and disability hate. Learners are going to deepen their understanding under both of these strands of hate crime, thinking about lived experiences, systemic inclusion, and compounded vulnerability. Practical advocacy skills are going to be strengthened all throughout this course, but this really looks at applied scenarios and looking at what person-led support with these specific groups looks like. Before we move on to racist hate and faith-based hate, it looks at structural inequality, experiences from institutions, and really starts to delve even deeper into building response plans that consider safety, power, and justice. On day 5, we look at non-criminal justice advocacy approaches. We recognize that hate crime, though it operates under a specific section of the law in England and Wales, there are also people who do experience hate and targeting based on other characteristics that are not recognized in those approaches. We also know that some people who are recognized in hate crime law might not want to move forward with criminal justice advocacy. They might have other needs. There might be other creative approaches we need to keep in mind for people who choose not to engage with those systems, who might not believe in those systems, and ensuring that they know what their options are as well, and that any ICA who completes this course is open to thinking creatively and giving that holistic support. On day 6, we go into hate crime advocacy best practices. This whole day is just about live learning together, going through cases, thinking about how we'd respond, role playing. The entire day is really about real world application, empathetic decision making, and effective communication. This is where we want to ensure that people don't just understand how this advocacy works, but they know what it feels like. They've practiced it. On day 7, we'll have a live assessment day and course closure. So the final day brings together all of our course learning outcomes through a final live assessment and cohort debrief on best practices and future learning. This day is where there'll be a final live assessment where you're essentially going through a role play together to exemplify the skills that you've learned all throughout this course. By the end of the course, you will be equipped with in-depth knowledge of hate crime in the UK and the 5 legally recognized strands. You'll gain skills and confidence to support victims and survivors. You'll understand each of the legally recognized strands as well as those not protected in that system. You'll also apply an intersectional approach to complex cases, use best practice responses through realistic scenarios. You'll understand how person-centered interventions create change, and you'll achieve a professional qualification demonstrating your ability to deliver effective and high-quality advocacy. At the end of the day, you understand how hate incidences could affect your organization, your clients, your colleagues, those that you support, and why early informed interventions reduce harm and escalation. Again, it's not about whether hate could happen here. It's, are we ready for when it does? Approach overall in the course is really about using real scenarios and tangible actions. We don't want people to sort of only be based in theoretical understanding of how this form of advocacy works. We want people to feel confident in going out and doing it, working within an organization and feeling confident to provide meaningful person-centered trauma-informed advocacy. Again, intersectional trauma-informed approaches. It's also about personal development. When we think about the power inherent to an advocate, when we think about positionality, how we could be impacted if someone shares our positionality and experiences hate, we want to ensure that we're looking inward and outward all throughout this course. And we use an action learning approach. So, action learning is defined as continuous process of learning, reflection supported by colleagues with an intention of getting things done. In other words, individual work. One of the fundamental aims of us using an action learning approach is to help participants develop skills and to make time for active reflection in order to solve their own problems. In our course, we'll be using action learning sets, which are small groups of people who you meet with at the start and end of every single day of the course that you're going to go through different scenarios with, reflections with, you can seek help from, you can collaborate with, and be able to do that in a way that you ideally would be doing when you're practically taking on this form of advocacy in the real world. You should be working collaboratively. Work that happens in a silo isn't going to be as strong for that victim and survivor. You also end up having a